Um, Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to ladies and gentlemen from all different parts of the world. Thank you for finding time and visiting today's webinar.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of our participants and audience around the world. Thank you all for finding time and visiting today's webinar. My name is Jordan Estejo. I'm an assistant professor at...
So can I start? So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to ladies and gentlemen from all different parts of the world. Thank you for finding time and visiting today's webinar. My name is Hyodan Estejo. I'm an assistant professor at Duitan University. The Asia Pacific Tourism Association and Duitan University co-host DTU Webinar Series to think together the impact on tourism education during and after COVID-19 by inviting renowned experts from all around the world. Last Tuesday, we organized the first webinar on issues and challenges toward tourism education during and after the COVID-19. And this is our second webinar. Today, our theme is preparing for tourism education in the post-COVID-19 era. And we will talk about it along the following 4 guiding questions. First, a changing tourism education is imperative. And second, what kind of tourism education model will emerge from COVID-19? And third, what is the fundamental nature of tourism education that we need to keep for our future generations? And the last question is, will COVID-19 bring a revolution or a back to normal rush of tourism education? So today we have a fantastic group of experts. And now I would like to welcome our keynote speaker and panelist. Good morning, Professor Maria Gabari-Babras from France. Hello.
Good morning, bonjour.
Bonjour. And good afternoon, Professor Perry Hobson from Malaysia.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
And good afternoon, Professor Young-Yong Hwang from Korea.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And good afternoon, Professor Shuri Guevara from Philippines.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, and good afternoon, Professor Sang-Won Park from Hong Kong.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yeah, from Hong Kong.
Oh, great. And our webinar will take around 70 minutes. And the keynote speaker presents a review of the theme. And then 4 panelists each have 10 minutes to provide additional perspectives. So we will also have time for questions and comments at the end. And all our audience, please, if you have questions, please leave it on chat on YouTube. And yes, let's start. And we are privileged to have Professor Maria Gabari-Babras joining us as a keynote speaker. She is the director of the Institute for Research and High Studies on Tourism and vice provost for international relations of Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne University, France. And also, Professor Maria Gabari-Babras is the director of UNESCO Share and the coordinator of UniTwin Network, Tourism Culture Development, comprising 30 top-level universities from all around the world. So we will turn the time over to our keynote speaker. Professor Maria Gabari-Babras, are you ready for the presentation?
Yes. Just a moment to share my screen. Yes. I would like, good morning, everybody from France. Good afternoon. I would like, first of all, to thank the organizers, APTA and Duitan University, And a special thanks also to Hyodan Estelle Shaw, who I'm really happy to see here again. I'm very glad to meet here colleagues from Vietnam, from Malaysia, from Hong Kong, from Korea, and from the Philippines. And good afternoon, good morning to all of you. Let me remind first the challenges that we are facing today as tourism researchers and professors. Those are some examples of last year's 2019 academic production. A very impressive number of books as those presented here and of papers published on over-tourism, which along with the tourismophobia became suddenly a common tourism research terminology. And in fact, in a few months, we passed from over-tourism to no tourism. Over-touristified places were suddenly emptied from tourism and visitors. Here is the example of Tiananmen Square before and during the pandemic. But in Europe, we also faced the same situation in places such as here, Fontana di Trevi in Rome, one of the most visited and photographed landmarks in the Italian capital. But in fact, not only cities, monuments, and tourist landscapes were emptied. We experienced the same phenomena with our universities. You can see here this picture of the big amphitheater in Sorbonne as it stands since March 2020. However, crisis as time of critical thought for both the tourism education and tourism, or as a scientific and academic field. So how can we in fact revisit crisis today? If we think about post-COVID, should we think about business as usual, or about the possibility to critically think about tourism and about tourism futures, and consequently, of course, about tourism education? We could say that we should never let a good crisis go by and eventually think on crisis, capitalize on crisis in order to reinvent tourism and to reinvent, of course, tourism education. So is it just about resetting the baton, or is it time to think on a different tourism model? The pictures here, among many others, are a small selection of Barcelona's signs of over-tourism, and I think to a certain extent of tourismophobia. In many areas, tourism has come to be considered as a predatory industry, but built without consultation with local communities. So can we consider that the crisis is a time of a necessary pause, allowing to think about a new tourism ethos for a new tourism development? And also, how can we reflect this in our tourism programs? Is it here also just to reset the button, or to consider that crisis can be an opportunity for a new tourism education and new tourism futures? The main points of my presentation will be twofold. I will organize my presentation in around two main issues. First, COVID changes in teaching in general means what the distance learning that we experienced during the last months, and we will probably continue to experience in the next months and eventually years. What does it bring? And in a second point, think about COVID changes in tourism education. Here in terms of how do we understand tourism in contemporary societies? How do we connect the tourism to other fields, such as social well-being, social empowerment, local development, sharing of values? So I will organize my presentation around those main points. First of all, I will very briefly speak about online teaching, and I will try here to go beyond technical issues. Of course, all of us, we insisted a lot on technical issues. Obviously, I think that our universities were not exactly prepared to turn 90% more or less of our face-to-face teaching to online teaching in a very short time. In fact, in my university, in Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, we needed to shift in 1 week time 90% of our face-to-face teaching to online teaching. And we had, in fact, to deal with obviously technical issues. The capacity of our internet connection, the kind of platforms that we privilege. Microsoft Meet, Sky Business, Zoom suddenly became part of our everyday life. But in fact, the capacity of our universities to deliver online classes is, I think, only a very small part of the problem. What about, in fact, the connectivity of our students? In a survey we did in the beginnings of the confinement in Paris, we saw that a very considerable number of our students do not have a smartphone or do not live in an area with a good connection. They don't have a personal computer, and they share the same computer with parents and siblings who also need to use it regularly. So online classes bring also social segregation issues into the university much more than face-to-face classes, at least in France, where higher education is free. So one of the first things that we had to do is to massively help our students by offering cards for their telephones or personal computers. And in fact, we invested more than 800,000 euros in order to facilitate the connection of our students. And then, of course, we do have to deal with psychological problems due to isolation. This was more the case of our international students, at least those who have chosen to stay in France during COVID. And also ethical and philosophical issues. University delivers knowledge, of course, and supposedly this is still possible with online classes. But what about critical thinking? What about debate, which is sometimes very, very difficult to do in a kind of online teaching? And finally, we also have very important issues of intellectual property, since we are currently absolutely not protected. And I'm not only speaking here about confidentiality on Zoom, which is, of course, an issue per se, but I'm speaking about our scientific and academic protections, which are not always, in fact, guaranteed when we teach online. So those are the problems that I think that all of us are very familiar with. The question, of course, is how can we transform a problem into opportunity? How can we, in fact, create some added values by bringing together, for example, our more remote partners? In my university, in Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne University, in fact, the best experience of online teaching were not, in fact, with our students, to whom I am afraid we delivered our normal courses in a poorer way than in a face-to-face situation, but with international partners. And I would like just here very, very briefly to give the example of our university alliance. This is a European university alliance called Una Europa, composed by the 8 universities you can see here on this slide. And in fact, Una Europa became offered the possibility to invent new approaches to bring together students located in the 4 corners of Europe. For example, we launched the UNA10 challenge, aiming to respond to main challenges related to COVID. So this was a very interesting opportunity to strengthen our university networks by asking to our students in those 8 different universities to work on those 4 challenges that you can see here: rethinking tourism, entertainment and culture, securing privacy and preventing misconceptions in a digital world, ensuring traveler safety, and avoiding food waste. So here, in fact, virtual teaching was an added value because students work locally with local partners, but through a European ideation process and virtual idea boards, they were inspired by other ideas and brought, in fact, global minds to a local challenge. And we are now testing with our university partners new models of virtual and hybrid mobility. For example, we are testing totally virtual curricula and totally virtual mobility, allowing, for example, to our students to take classes from our partner universities, or hybrid mobility, combining this with short face-to-face classes, such as winter or summer schools, or eventually hybrid classes by bringing together students in different universities, working together in a common project. So the question here is, should we speak about social distancing, or should we speak about physical distancing and social proximity? This is what we tried, in fact, to build by working on our student cohorts, working on globally the university community, and also working with our partner universities belonging to our strategic networks. So this is my first part, speaking about issues concerning online teaching. Now, I would like to pass to my second point, which is about the contents of our tourism programs. How can we bring, in fact, in our programs, a new tourism ethos? How can we challenge a kind of laissez-faire approach, considering that tourism will regenerate spontaneously after the crisis? How can we bring in our classes the challenge of a new deal for tourism? And how can we prepare our students to, well, not only to a new normal, but to a new ethic? I think that those are very important questions, and we need, in fact, to understand, but also we need to teach. We also need to do research on tourism as a total social phenomenon. This means that we are invited as professors, as researchers, to see the crisis as an opportunity to prioritize we over me and to reinvent tourism with our students, with our new researchers in new ways. So transform a kind of survival plan, because all of us, we experienced during the last months as academics, a survival situation. So how can we transform it into a plan for sustainable growth? How can we consider tourism as an engine for other sectors? And I think this is a very, very important point. Other sectors directly or indirectly connected to tourism, and how can we bring this new approach in our tourism programs and our tourism education? And I will just very, very briefly open 6 windows here, 6 points about new values of tourism: sustainability, total safety, local, reinvented local in a way, reinvention of heritage values, reflexivity, reactivity, and resilience, and also how can we connect in our programs tourism beyond tourism. Very briefly, speaking about sustainability, we need to embed it as a core value of tomorrow's growth, and we need really to bring this more than ever in our tourism curricula, in our tourism education. More and more people become sensitive to sustainable developments. The destinations, and we know this, that will embrace sustainable growth will make the difference in the years to come. So we need more than ever, because this is not new per se, but more than ever, we need to invite students to be familiar with green energy projects, to investments that safeguard the national cultural and natural heritage, and also familiar with regeneration projects really involving local communities. Also, safe destination will be the utmost criterion. Of course, tourism is more than ever related to well-being today. A robust and efficient healthcare system organized in a decentralized manner will play a very important role in the years to come, including for tourism development. So health issues and more generally well-being becomes central for tourism studies and education. Local as the new exotic, as I said before, go beyond in terms of tourism teaching from existing models. As tourism professors, as tourism researchers, we must reinvent our own understanding of tourism. In the current crisis, people rediscovered hidden gems located in their region, are now easily accessible by car or by alternative means of transportation. And I think that in our programs, we must also challenge existing categories of close and remote, of familiar and exotic, and to encourage new tourism approaches. Deseasonalization and reinvention of heritage values means also to invite students to critically think about tourism in contemporary societies. What can tourism really bring to tourism hinterlands, for example, to remote areas, to the countryside, for example? How can tourism reveal heritage values? How can tourism reach deseasonalization and become a more stable means for local development? Again, this is not new. However, post-COVID invites to position ourselves as tourism academics and our students in a more thoughtful and critical way. Of course, I don't comment those three key words here because we know, all of us, how challenging it is to teach in changing times. None of us knows how future will be, but we all know that we need to adapt quite instantly to the changing situation. And we need to teach our students how to be reflexive, reactive, and resilient. Finally, and this is my last word, tourism beyond tourism. I think that the most important is to invite students to see tourism as a holistic phenomenon. Again, this is not new. And safety, for example, has always been determinant for tourism. But more than ever, tourism depends today on sound and well-planned investments, for example, on public health. Tourism goes today far beyond the tourism sphere, and it's very important to fully understand and explain also to our young colleagues, young researchers and students, that tourism really connects with other sectors. So yeah, reset the button of tourism, okay, and of tourism education, yes, but we must also keep in mind all the new complexity of the current tourism sphere. We do not only teach differently, online teaching, no face-to-face classes, no more field trips, but also we need to teach in the context of a different tourism paradigm. And finally, we can say that those are great times to reinvent both the tourism and the tourism education. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Maria Gaba-Rivas, for this excellent speech. And just a reminder, we will have time for questions and comments at the end. And let's move to panel discussion and panel presentations. So our first panelist is Professor Perry Hobson. So he is the Pro Vice Chancellor for engagement at Sunway University in Malaysia, where he is responsible for global and local engagement activities. So he has been the editor-in-chief of the SSCI Indexed Journal of Vacation Marketing for over 20 years and sits on the board of directors of the International Center of Excellence in Hospitality and Tourism Education, accreditation body. So are you ready, Professor Perry?
Of course. Thank you. And good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be in the world. And thank you again for that introduction and for the opening presentation there. Maria, that was great. I think that set the scene really very well for us all today and gave us some really good food for thought. I'm just going to load up my presentation here. And I would like to thank everybody for taking the time to come and spend this time listening and talking about these critical issues that we're facing across the region. But I think as a segue from that last presentation, let's remember today only happened because we have got COVID. I think it has turbocharged the change that Maria was talking about there so much. And I think we have to look at the opportunities that this is going to bring to us. So as you've heard, I'm based at Sunway University in Malaysia, which is right behind me here, based in a suburb of Kuala Lumpur. It's a very modern campus, an unusual campus in the sense that we are a tourist destination ourselves. We have hotels, shopping malls, theme parks, ski rinks, the whole lot around us. So it's an unusual place. And my last week has been spent not only giving presentations or webinars such as this one, and again, last week's webinar was fantastic as well, gave me a lot of interesting food for thought, but also talking about where is the hospitality industry going. This was one I did recently here in Asia. And to pick up on the point Maria was making, we were just talking at an Asia Technology Conference about virtual exchange and how we can now do things differently and move just from thinking about global mobility to global learning. And I think these are the sorts of questions that are now being thrown up. But for today, I want to look into the future a little bit, because if you're looking at the future, you've got to have a plan. And often I have to ask people in tourism, what is your plan? And I'm constantly disappointed at how few people have a vision for the tourism industry. A lot of the hospitality industry, particularly, just sleepwalks around into what is going on. And as Maria raised there, is what we want in the future to be what we had? Is it going to be a Groundhog Day of 2019? Do we want to go back to the over-tourism she was talking about in Barcelona, the closed beaches in Thailand or the Philippines, where they had to close Boracay down? Is that the future we want? If it's something else, this is a reset button to think that. We're also at a time now when disruption. So disruption is going to keep on happening. And that's something, as you said, it's hard to teach in this environment. But believe me, I think this is just the beginning of a period of disruption. So however we want to look at it, we saw that Airbnb was born out of technological disruption. I was reading about Brian Chesky this week, who was saying my Airbnb business has been ruined by disruption. The very thing that created him is now threatening to destroy Airbnb because it's a different form of disruption. But let's imagine for a moment, everyone talks about a vaccine. What if there is no vaccine for COVID? What then? What happens if this flu mutates every year like regular flu? What happens if we get more spikes and closed borders? 7,000 people were quarantined in Germany, same bigger numbers in China recently. This is not even the beginning of the end. We've had the most number of infections we've seen happened yesterday. So we're not well down the path with this. So are we going to have to talk about counter COVID measures a little bit like we talked about counter-terrorism after 9/11? Is that going to be our short term, but what's going to be our long term? Is it the end really of the conventional cruise industry? So these are troubling questions to ask, but we need to think about them. Even The Economist, this week's front page of The Economist is asking the question, what's the next catastrophe? The Australians had bushfires, which were the worst ever we had ever had in Australia in December. Little did they know that COVID was going to arrive a few months later. So whether it's fires, floods, volcanoes, epidemics and pandemics, war, terrorism, is it a recession or a depression, long-term climate change or sustainability issues, and further disruptions to technology. Oh, and let's not forget asteroids, because they wiped out the dinosaurs. So I know there's lots of things to worry about there, but we have to realistically remember that this is going to be the disruption. Now, interestingly, I teach a course on the future, and always 3 points I have to make to people. You can forecast off where you're at, which is very difficult to do during times of disruption. We can create scenarios of a future, or we can think of the future we want, and then we have to work out how to go there and what has to be done to get us there. And that's probably, I think, one bit of the tourism industry we need to think about. Toyota, for example, has already said no more petrol engines by 2040. So what has that company got to do to make that future point happen? What have they got to do in 2030, 2025? Tourism needs to also start thinking about that way. Two things I want to touch on, which have already been touched on today. First is technology, though the second is sustainability. So if the technological push is coming, what does that mean for us? Our friends in the manufacturing area have talked endlessly about Industry 4.0. I question where are we at with Tourism 4.0. We will soon see that technology connected and interconnected. So every destination, and now that everybody, I suspect the way it's going to work is most of us are going to have tracking apps. So we're now going to know, thanks to COVID, where everyone is. I went shopping this weekend. Every shop I went into here in Malaysia, I had to tick off on a QR code. No shopping mall's ever known that about me before, where I was, how long I was there. This is really going to change things quite dramatically. And this will be done whether we like it or afraid whether we don't. So this is going to bring us on to already certain cities were working out smart tourism, the EU. In fact, Lyon in France and Helsinki were the smart tourism capitals of Europe last year. Prague has already got a plan for 2030. How is our industry going to be planned into this? Several years ago, Kathy Entz from Cornell said, there are a lot of the things we do in the hospitality industry that are artifacts of another time. Hotels miss opportunities to rethink, and we're having to rethink really hard right now. So we've got to move away in the hotel industry from our museum status to thinking about that future status. Imagine if these people ran hotels. How do you think Elon Musk would run the Tesla hotel? Well, for a start, you'd drive in an electric car. The hotel would probably be on the moon or maybe on Mars. It'd be carbon neutral and the service would be sure fast. James Dyson, he'd redesign every electric item in the hotel. And I can't wait to see the Dyson toilet, of course. But if you think about Jack Ma, oh, but wait, he already has got a hotel. This is his hotel already. He's already opened it. So if we want to have a glimpse at the future, we can begin to see the sorts of things that are already happening there. And we in education are going to have to catch up with this. We've already got competitions such as the radical design in hospitality. They're already out there. So we need to tune into how things are going to be rather than get hung up on how things were. So whether you want to put in your competition note for this, go for it, because hospitality and tourism is going to have to shift, and we've got to think radically. We're not radical people in hospitality and tourism often, but I think we need to be. Which brings me into the sustainability issues. And clearly, as has already been pointed out today, these are significant for us. And these have got to be built into our industry for our longer term survival. So looking forward, whether it's tourism or hospitality, will it be carbon neutral, organic, meat-free, and is everything going to be recycled? Because if we don't have that vision, like Toyota's had of cars, governments will bring it to us. That will be the next thing that's going to happen. So if we don't want to end up on the scrap heap of history, which is where bits of our industry are going to head, then someone's going to have to start rethinking very fast. So the future's coming. Let me finish off with the points about education. Because as has been pointed out today, let's remember how nice 2019 was. Students all sat in nice rows. They didn't actually ask too many questions. So this was all very convenient for lecturers. They all sat hopefully in nice uniforms as well if you're in a hotel school. These days have gone. We're going to be moving much more to collaborative learning, even when we can get back on campus. We are going to see our professors change. It's not going to be cardigans anymore. It's going to be more, we're going to see technological leaps forward. So whether you've got an AI professor or a real professor, time will tell. So face-to-face teaching, I'm afraid, is going to be a little bit out. We've seen that the world can do things differently. COVID has proved that. So whether you're going to be like the new normal, which is this professor who's actually teaching to a class from the United States, he's teaching to them in China. So as Maria's already pointed out, this is going to be where we're going to go. After all, we use collaborative learning in kindergartens. It was only when we industrialized education, we made people sit in endless rows to mimic the factories we were preparing people for jobs in. So if we've got to make that shift now, this is where the shift in education is coming. Is it going to be fair? Is it straightforward? And you've heard today already of many of the students who struggled because they haven't got the right connectivity and IT. And that is certainly going to be a problem. But even now, and this was formerly where I was in Australia with the hotel school in Sydney through Southern Cross University, where you've got students and you can download her video talking about being at a hotel school, but being at home, this was inconceivable just 6 months ago. So we have to rethink how this is going to be. Connectivity. We're already connecting, and this is already happening. Erasmus Plus had already been working on virtual exchanges. And this, I think, is going to be a much greater way forward, as you've already heard today, because this is linking universities and institutions together. We need to prepare our staff for this so that we can share the tourism expertise that is around the room, that the membership of ACTA, whether you're in Vietnam, Korea, France, can now be a resource for everybody, not just for a few students at one particular university. This semester, I normally give a range of guest lectures in Austria. I've been doing this since 2006. So for the last 14 years, I've flown to Innsbruck. Well, this year I wasn't going to go anywhere. So in many years, it's a very interactive experience for me and the students. But this year, no, it wasn't. But I made it interactive. I made it something different. And my students were in 15 time zones. They were spread from Korea to British Columbia. Now, that proved a huge challenge for me and the team. But as you can see from the students, I had them from all over the place. And it was rethinking how I could deliver that course and to do it differently and to do it better. And working with my colleagues in Ghana and Austria, that was something we made happen. So I do believe that we're going to have to rethink tourism and hospitality education, but I believe that we've got a lot of colleagues out there who can do that. The students, to finish, are crying out for help. 11 weeks ago, I launched with 2 of my colleagues something called 30-minute talks. We run it for 30 minutes with Q&A afterwards. It runs 2 o'clock every Wednesday. We've had over 550 students coming. Why? Because many of them tell us that the challenge they've got is that they don't have very current interactive content. So these are the sorts of things we hope to be able to provide. So is this the future tourist? Well, maybe this is your grandma tuned into virtual reality, and this may be your student of the future. So be ready, because guess what? The future is coming, and we're going to have to change and adapt to it. Hopefully that's given you some food for thought. And again, thanks very much for the invitation today and having been able to share these ideas. Back to you. I think you might be on mute.
We cannot hear you.
I think we've lost you down onto mute. It's one of the challenges of Zoom. Oops, we've lost, never mind. Well, maybe one of our colleagues would like to start while she's just working out with her technology. From Hong, why don't you step in while Estelle's trying to figure out the technology?
Okay. I'm glad, and I really enjoyed our keynote speaker and Perry's comments. And first of all, on behalf of APTA members, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Lim and Deaton University staff to create this wonderful opportunity. It's my great honor and pleasure to be a part of this event. We are experiencing new challenge caused by COVID-19. As tourism educators, we have to think of the influence of this never experienced challenges for the future of tourism and tourism education. Well, the key question everybody has these days is, are we expecting a new normal or back to normal after COVID-19? And tourism fields, among other industry sectors, seems to have the most serious impact from the pandemic of COVID-19. According to the recent statistic here in Korea, the gross domestic production in tourism field has been dropped by 90%. Travel agency is the most damaged industry sectors, followed by hotel and airline industry. In order to answer the question of, are we going to have a new normal or back to normal, we need to think of the nature of travel experience. Then the question we have could be translated into, are we expecting the nature of travel experience be changed due to the COVID-19? It is also closely related to the reason why tourism industry is the most influenced industry by disease like COVID-19. Well, tourism industry is an industry based on trips, which have a necessary condition of spatial movement. Without the condition of spatial movement, a trip cannot be defined and tourism industry could not be existed. Pandemic of COVID-19 practically banned this spatial movement. In-person service is the final key product of tourism service. The development of information technology has helped travelers to find the travel-related information. And travelers these days can make their travel-related decision with more information than ever. However, if you think the nature of travel experience, the final product consumed is still the in-person service in a tourism destination, where it's apart from usual life environment. Pandemic of COVID-19 banned this contact-based service between travelers and local people and service providers. Are we expecting the nature of travel experience to be changed after COVID-19? In order to find the answer to this question, we also need to differentiate the stages we are facing. We are in the stage of living with COVID-19 now. COVID-19 has not overcome yet. Well, there are some trends in travel during the COVID-19 pandemic era. This is an experience of Korea. As the government loosened up the social distancing policy, a distinct travel pattern has emerged. It can be characterized as a short haul trip, domestic trip, and visit to remote destination. So people tend to take a 2 to 3 day trips, which is relatively short trip, to the place where they expect that not so many people will be visiting. This trip can only be domestic trips. In terms of tourism education during the COVID-19, the most dramatic and forced change is the emergence of distance learning. As you all know, here in Korea, I just finished the spring semester. And of course, all the classes were done by online class, like almost every part of the globe. Some of the instructors likes online class, while many of them agree that there are differences between online and offline classes. Students also express pros and cons of online classes. One interesting thing is that almost all the universities here in Korea have tried to introduce online class in addition to offline class, even before the COVID-19. The speed of adoption was very slow because of many reasons, like reluctance of instructors to try a new form of teaching, or lack of positive perception on online class, or limited capacity of technology within university, and so on. Because of COVID-19, online class become one of the major form of teaching in the universities. More people talk about the pros and cons of online class, and a new form of teaching like hybrid teaching is suggested as an alternative form of teaching for the future. Another stage we have to think about is the after the COVID-19, which we call a post-COVID-19. We hope we can have a post-COVID-19 very soon. It seems that the distinction between during and post-COVID-19 can be decided by the development of the vaccine for the virus. Well, I don't want to assume that what if there is no vaccine? I do hope we're gonna have vaccine. In year 2009, we have experienced the pandemic of swine flu. And swine flu caused about 280,000 deaths within 18 months. Fortunately, a vaccine called the Tamiflu was developed, and the swine flu has become another type of flu. It seems that everybody in the world are hoping that we can have a vaccine like a Tamiflu for the COVID-19 soon. So let's assume that we have vaccine for the COVID-19. So we are facing the post-COVID-19 era. And we do not know when, but like many others, I do hope that it's going to be very soon. If this is happening, the COVID-19 will be degraded as another type of flu, which we are living with everyday life. The situation we are expecting or assuming is completely different from during COVID-19 pandemic era. So during situation is very different from post-COVID, what we are talking about here. And during the post-COVID-19, we don't need to afraid of moving around and meeting the people. So with this stage, the nature of travel experience, I emphasized spatial movement and in-person service will be remain the same. Talking about the form of teaching in tourism education, a hybrid teaching will be quickly adapted. And it is more efficient and can be quickly transformed. Another method of hybrid teaching can be quickly transformed either into online or offline, depends on the situations. But there still remains an important challenge for the tourism educators. Future generation who experience the power of pandemic of COVID-19 realize the tourism industry is a very sensitive industry sector to the external factors like COVID-19. So during the COVID-19, they have observed how the tourism industry is influenced by pandemic. For this reason, I think it can be easily expected that number of talented future tourism students will be decreased. Because of this reason, I think tourism educators need to advocate the importance of tourism industry and promote their own program in all the ways possible. So having said that, I would like to conclude my presentation by answering the given 4 questions. A changing tourism education is imperative. My answer is yes, but it was supposed to be. So we talked about how we can transform our education into different way of teaching, but different paradigm as well. What kind of tourism education model will emerge from COVID-19? A hybrid teaching will be emerged which is a mix of online and offline learning, but also a different form, new form, integrating students from different university and put it in one program. This is another way, another form of hybrid teaching as well. So what is the fundamental nature of tourism education that we need to keep for our future generation? Well, basic, very bottom line, the nature of travel experience will not be changed. This is the value every traveler will pursue. But the way we deliver this value, we can develop, we can think of innovative way, different way to deliver those values to the travelers. But a fundamental value will remain same. Will COVID-19 bring a revolution or a back to normal rush of tourism education? This is my view. I would bet on back to normal, rush to the back to the normal as soon as we have the vaccine. I do hope we do have the vaccine soon. And thank you again for the opportunity to share my idea regarding the COVID-19 and its influence on tourism industry and tourism education. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Huang, for this presentation. And Dr. Young-Yeon Huang is a professor of Department of Tourism Management and Director of Institute of Tourism and Leisure Research and Dean of International Affairs Office at Donghwa University, Korea. And since 2014, he has been the chairman of Asia Pacific Tourism Association. And it is my honor to invite our next panelist, Dr. Shuri Guevara. She is a professor of Department of Hotel, Restaurant, and Institution Management and Dean of College of Home Economics of University of the Philippines in Diliman. And she has served as Philippine country representative in the Asia Pacific Tourism Association Board. So Dr. Shuri Guevara, could you please start your presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Chu. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Busan University. Can you see me? Hello?
Yeah, we can see you. Can you're trying to share the presentation
Okay,
now?
yeah, I'm going to share now.
Okay.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank Busan University, especially Dr. Lim, and of course the Asia Pacific Tourism Association with the chair, Dr. Wang, for inviting me to this webinar. I would like to start my presentation by looking back at that fateful day of March 10, 2020, when our president ordered the closure of all establishments and schools in the country, and this prompted all the faculty members to migrate their lessons to online platform. And so this arrangement might continue until December if a vaccine has not been developed. Okay, so amidst the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, there should be a paradigm shift in tourism and hospitality education in terms of content, assessment, and delivery, or pedagogy. And we need to prepare our students to become resilient and adaptive to changing times. As we navigate this challenging episode in our lives, we push for lifelong learning than just education and learning. So what have we accomplished so far? In the Philippines, we have adjusted our learning outcomes and strategies. In the University of the Philippines, we were encouraged to conduct bridging programs even beyond the end of the semester, which was last May 13, 2020. And we are now redesigning our curriculum, or curricula, And in our department, we decided to move our laboratory classes to the latter part of the year in the hope of having the face-to-face teaching mode return to the normal. But autonomous universities have more flexibility to conduct these changes in their curricula because in the Philippines, most universities are under the Commission on Higher Education, which determines any curricular revision. So what kind of tourism education model will emerge from COVID-19? Actually, there's no perfect model that we can think of because this situation is iterative and it's like a moving target. But we will give more weight given or more weight to be given on outcome-based education with learning outcomes as the metrics. Being learner-centered, we will give students more study hours than lectures. It's what we plan in our university. And examinations will be replaced with assessment of learning. That model should leverage on biotechnology, robotics, information technology, which Dr. Lim mentioned last week, artificial intelligence especially, and for data analytics being used to create digital apps. We are now going to contactless, cashless transactions. We can use these apps for space planning, for physical distancing, and even in the management of food production in kitchen, in order taking and delivery. We already know that some hotels are using robots to clean and sanitize their hotels, and even serve food to guest rooms. The picture there was taken in Hailai Hotel in Taiwan. I saw one also in Guangzhou, China, and they use that to bring food to guests in hotel rooms. We can also use the apps for contact tracing. Now, this was discussed by Perry earlier on. We can give more emphasis on concepts that relate to the impact of tourism in wider environmental, social, and cultural developments, and vice versa, which we can do through teaching and also research. We can anchor our discussion on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with personal hygiene, cleanliness, and sanitation, physical distancing as the prime concepts. And these are the new protocols that the Department of Health and the World Health Organization have been prescribing to everyone all over the world. We can continue to talk about risk reduction management that's akin to crisis management and climate change as we teach our students to learn how to mitigate risks and manage this when this happens. And of course, we will continue to talk about economic and environmental sustainability, preserving our assets and managing how human beings interact with this with these assets and their immediate environment. We also have to embrace SDG 12, responsible production and consumption, being vigilant that these activities will not destroy our environment. And then we talk about our tourism still, because this is very important, and we can relate this to carrying capacity and renewal of nature, which is happening now, and conservation of tourism assets. So we can talk about contingency measures that will preserve these assets, especially during pandemics or calamities. Of course, the CSR is a very important concept because we should include social and environmental issues in the operation of tourism and hospitality establishments. We will go for equity, equal or equitable distribution of social and economic benefits of tourism among stakeholders. We should also teach our students develop a welcoming environment to all stakeholders, regardless of their status. The first question that came to my mind during the lockdown was employment, because we know that we have the new batch of graduates from hospitality and tourism programs. So our students should be taught how to be resilient. And we can also apply this to our environment, our tourism assets. Uh, we need to learn how to cope up quickly from difficulties. So in terms of the fundamental nature of tourism and hospitality education that we should maintain for future generations, we should continue to impart holistic knowledge on sustainability, resilience, and environmental management. These are the buzzwords in tourism and hospitality. And of course, we don't neglect the business side of tourism as we enhance the students' management skills in the development, marketing, and operation of tourism organizations, destinations, and hospitality establishments. What are the possible outcomes? These concepts have been discussed in passing by Dr. Wang. This is of course, Philippine experience, so we go for nature nurture. We achieve food security and agricultural resiliency, like food and farm tourism, and that's because the Department of Tourism has predicted that the new breed of tourists will be from 85 to 30, 18 to 35 years old, rather. Will go for food and nature tripping, fresh air, fresh food, and taking short land travels. We can also look at cultural tourism, like artisanal artworks and museums, because these are more tame in character, and ideally they can accommodate small groups. And of course, we can go local. That's domestic tourism, which has been always the saving grace of Philippine tourism during hard times, as articulated by our Undersecretary of Tourism, Danito Bengzon. And in a recent webinar, our Secretary Bernadette Puyat reported that the 2019 expenditure on domestic tourism was at $62.8 billion, or about 3.14 trillion pesos, comprising 12.7% of the Philippine gross domestic product. And on to the for the fourth question, will this pandemic bring a revolution or a back to normal rush of tourism education? For now, we cannot go back to the old normal anymore. I first learned about that from my son who's a doctor. But I hope that we will go back to the old normal as predicted by, articulated by Dr. Wang. So we need an education that is not disruptive, something that will endure the test of time and nature. This total paradigm shift should be contingent on technology that's attuned to dynamic technological changes, the use of digital platforms for remote learning, and apps for laboratory classes. We should go for a pedagogy that is forward-looking and suitable for our millennials as we continue the students' learning within the confines and comfort of their homes. And this is in the Philippine setting. We will continue to conduct distant or remote learning through blended modalities, synchronous, which is the real-time interaction between the learners and the teachers. And this could be a combination of face-to-face learning, field work, supervised out-of-classroom activities, and distant learning through teleconferences via Zoom or Google Classroom. Then we have asynchronous, which is non-real-time interaction between the learners and the teachers. And we can give our students webinars, ask them to watch virtual tours, virtual cooking, gastronomy, and for them to reflect on and write their reflections on digital discussion boards like Canvas. We can also communicate with them through Facebook Messenger, through Viber and texting and even emails. But you know, the most important thing for us in the Philippines is to consider those who live outside the metropolis, but because you know the Philippines is an archipelago, and several spots have no connectivity or have weak connectivity. So we're looking at learning packets or modules to be mailed to the students. So definitely we will have reduced face-to-face classes, and these are ideal for laboratory courses, even during when we go back to the new normal in the classroom. So this will be for small groups with physical distancing. We will continue to supplement learning with bridging programs in our university. Maybe this is also the most opportune time for us to strengthen our international ties, like having sandwich programs with our partner schools for online classes. We can tap visiting professors who were initially reluctant to leave their universities and join our universities. So they can do this through online classes. And maybe we can attract international students who don't have to leave their homes to attend our classes. But this one is a little bit contentious because I know that one of the incentives of being an international student is the experiential thing. You experience the culture and the tourism sites of the place where you're going to enroll in. In the Philippines, autonomous universities can explore more on the social science foundation of tourism and hospitality studies. We can anchor this on this theory, structure versus agency, and look at how tourism evolved to what it is today, how it impacted other sectors of the society and economy and the future generation in general, and vice versa. So let's look at how tourism also affected our value system as a people. Okay, so in conclusion, let me say that whatever we will come up with, we should operate with learning that is inclusive and compassionate. Because you know, right after the lockdown, the University Student Council of UP Diliman invoked this motto, walang iwanan, or no one should be left behind, because most of our students went home to the provinces, and according to a survey, about 40% of those who responded said that they have poor or no connectivity. And so this prompted the teachers to adjust their learning requirements and class modalities. But the Philippine tourism and hospitality industry has been a sunshine industry since the early 1970s. It has dimmed a little bit, but look at the sunshine. It will definitely bounce back. And so whatever revolution in education that's in the offing among our colleagues in the Philippines, we should prepare the learners to be self-reliant, resilient, and well-informed on the tenets of the new normal. Definitely, we should prepare our students for a renewed Philippine tourism and the hospitality industry. Maraming salamat at mabuhay.
Thank you, Professor Shiori Guebaja, for this enthusiastic presentation. And I'm happy to invite our next panelist, Dr. Sangwon Park. Dr. Park is a professor in the School of Hotel and Tourism Management at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University and coordinator of Tomorrow's Guest Rooms at Hotel Icon. And his primary research interests include tourism big data, information technology in tourism and hospitality, and smart tourism. So Dr. Park, are you ready?
Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Dr. Sangwon Park from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. It's my great honor to have this chance to share my thoughts regarding tourism education and in terms of COVID-19. As we already have discussed from last week from the DTU University, we know that every single member in education or industrial government sectors are largely suffered by COVID-19, which is one of the pandemic. So then if we ask a question, does it really affect our tourism education? Of course, yes, it is. So let me briefly share how I look at the tourism education and how it responds back to the change of environment. So, okay, so here is the impact of COVID-19 on tourism. As you said, as you already have listened to from 4 different speakers, as was last week, I will not highlight more detail, but somehow let me share briefly what happened in Hong Kong. As you can see here, the right side one image, this is a current Hong Kong airport. Do you think it's usual before COVID-19, the same situation? Of course not. This is what happened we used to be, but we largely affected by COVID-19. When you look at the statistics, as you can see here, when we look at 2019 May, we used to have approximately 6 million visitors, but now only 8,000. About growth rate, minus 99.9%. This is currently happening in Hong Kong tourism industry. Actually, tourism in Hong Kong is one of the most important sector that generated the income source to Hong Kong in general. Then this current situation, so then the COVID-19 only affect tourism industry itself? Of course not. I believe that the change of the environment, accordingly, from tourism education, we have to change ourselves to proactively respond back to the change of the environment. So, but now, within a short period of time, let me highlight 2 aspects, including delivery method and content. Yeah, I have heard from 4 previous speakers. They already highlight massively or very significantly hybrid learning. Similarly, we used to offer traditional method, which is online learning method. In classroom, we provide some knowledge to students. But now we have an online platform. Actually, in SHM, School of Hotel Tourism Management at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, we already have started online course, which calls MicroMasters in International Hospitality Management. Actually, it's somehow free course. If you want to have a certificate, you can pay a small amount of money and then you can get the official certificates. In our SHM, we offer 4 different programs, including luxury management, human resource, marketing, and information technology. Myself, I used to, and currently still teaching marketing class in MicroMasters. How many actually learners have contacted my class, which is marketing, and registered it? By now, when I check my edX system, currently we have over 17,000 learners from my class, from my own class. And then how many countries we reached it? Over 100 countries in my class. I think this is the future. We know that due to the pandemic issue, the people, students, including students, are very challenging to move around, but instead, we do not have to stop the learning or teaching. So online platform can be one of the solutions. We can keep sharing our knowledge and the information so that no matter where they are, like a special constraints, that when they are, so which is a time constraints, we don't have to worry about that. Like the platform or online system can facilitate to minimize the constraints. As a result, when we combine offline and online, we call it blended learning or hybrid learning. Yes, already 4 different speakers have significantly highlighted, so I will not repeat anymore. But briefly, how they look like that? Like this one. So one lecturer, they're sharing their knowledge at the same time, students in the classroom, as well as students from any places, they can attend or join the class via online. This is one of the things, is blended module. And then also, I want to highlight some of the hologram. I know that some of the speakers, I think one of the conferences information system, they somehow speaking in LA, Los Angeles, but attendees are in the New York. But some of the lecturer, they can keep showing some demonstration, but it's not really 2D as such a online platform, but using the hologram, the learners or attendees can see more detail by 3D platform. I think this is one of the way that such a minimize some disadvantages or challenges from the online platform itself. So because again, as I said, because already 4 speakers have provided more details of the delivering method, so I will not highlight anymore. But instead, please let me go to the next part, which is the contents. There's somehow I have a little bit different ideas compared to previous speakers. So in the contents of the teaching, so we basically can classify 2 types of knowledge. One, text knowledge. Text knowledge is the specific such a learning method from the students can really learn from their own experiences. We call it know-how. When they get a job, they can learn how to serve the guests or how to operate some businesses. They can learn from their own experiences, from their own kind of confronting their specific situations. But in the classroom, we can provide illicit knowledge. Students can learn some information, new idea from the books or watching from the video or some additional resources. I think the teaching can be regarded as illicit knowledge. Again, as I showed at the beginning, lots of the tourism industry has been changed. All the structure has been reshaped by pandemic. Do we need any new skills? I think yes, it is. In particular, I believe that analytical skills or critical thinking skills are quite important. How can I say that? I think the 2 main subjects can be highlighted. One of them is crisis management. Another one, a new way of a marketing topic, which is personal marketing. Crisis management, everything is kind of a crisis. No one, or it's most of people can expect what happened, this kind of pandemic issues. How about the economic recession, 2007 and 8? How many people were able to predict what the crisis will take place? It's very few people. Then if the tourism hospital sectors are able to, so what thing happen in future, and then they can proactively prepare and then ready to manage their specific issues. And how we can enhance our ability to manage the crisis management. I think analytical skills. With the development of a technology, like information technology, all the data can be saved. And then we are able to collect data and then analyze data. Like for example, climate changes. If climate changes, can you imagine what will happen in future? If we are able to at least some of the predict, at least we can expect or anticipate what will happen, then we can prepare ahead. So we can keep collecting the weather data. Accordingly, we can keep looking at how travel behaviors have been changed to the change of environment, change of the climate. For example, we have mobile sensor data. We can collect the credit card data. We can have a tool about social media data. These can be such a massive data. Then this is usually we relied on such an information system major people or engineer or computer science. Does this mean that our tourism hospital students, they don't have to understand what the data is about, how we analyze data? I don't really believe so. We are the people in tourism hospitality. We know tourism hospitality industry better than anybody else. Then accordingly, we have to be able to understand the data, how we find the insights from it. Then we are able to manage the crisis well. Like we had the economic crisis before. Now we have some issues in the health about that. And then I believe that in future, as Perry mentioned, sensibility issues, which is climate change. Then we have to be ready by understanding the data and how we prepare for that. Also, as Dr. Huang mentioned before, travel behavior has been changed. Their distance has been changed. Yes, it is. People likely go to more short distance. Accordingly, I believe that mass tourism will be gone in future. More individual travel behavior will happen. Then individual people have different needs and preferences, which require customized or personalized marketing. How one marketing person can offer different marketing stimulus or resource to individual travelers is very difficult. We need to rely on technology. We need to rely on data so that we can understand heterogeneity of travel behaviors and how we prepare our own product, promotion, and so on. These things, everything coming into one specific focus, which is data analytics in tourism hospitality. This is the current changes. Look at that. Already, many hotels adopting AI system like robots, or not only in the front office, like the front office services or F&B, robot serving the food, and the robot serving some responding to inquiries from customers, as well as the back office, revenue management, or some marketing managers. They don't really rely on their intuition anymore. They keep checking their dashboard system, getting the recommendation information from AI system. They can make a strategy for that. How about chatbot? Bank, insurance company. If you ask questions, people respond back. There's no human anymore, or chatbot. I believe that a lot of online travel agency has been changed back to that, to the chatbot system too. In this cases, when we do tourism, I want to highlight the big data. As a result, a lot of people talking about now, which is smart tourism. Accordingly, in SSTM at Hong Kong Putin University, myself, I proposed 2 new classes, which I'm going to teach next semester. One of them, big data analytics in tourism hospitality. Another one, business analytics in tourism hospitality. Please don't misunderstand that. I don't really emphasize that we have to be very strong. We have to acquire strong analytical skills. It's not what I'm saying. What I want to tell you is that we have to be able to understand data so that we can find some insights from the data so that we can use it for planning, management, and then decision-making process. Last, so intelligence has been changing. We used to rely on human intelligence. So we have our intuitions, and then we are reading the books, and then we have our own experiences. But we have AI, which is the results from development of technology. When we combine together, we now facing to extended knowledge. So we can usually take advantage of ability of intelligent AI, which help us to improve our productivity, enhance our ability, combining with human intelligence. Then I think now this is the stage to highlight extended intelligence, which can be embedded into our tourism education system. Okay, thank you very much for your listening, and then any of your questions, comments will be very appreciated.
Thank you, Professor Bob, for sharing practical information and ideas. Great. So we will go ahead and take some time for questions and comments now. And we have one good question from our audience. So the question is, how can hotel and restaurant practical classes be conducted during this time? So is there anyone who wants to answer to this question? So, oh yes, Dr. Sherry. Yes.
Thank you. That is actually our problem, and so we have requested the university to look for applications for laboratory classes, but the immediate thing that we have thought about is to move our lab classes to the latter part of the year in the hope that the situation will improve.
Yes. Or is there anyone who wants to answer to this question? So I will repeat, how can hotel and restaurant practical classes be conducted during this time?
Well, many of the Korean universities actually try to incorporate those ideas. Usually the size of the class is like 30 to 40, but for the practical classes, with under the COVID-19 situation, it has to reduce the number of students who can attend. So virtual online class for those practical classes is not effective. That's the reason why I think the audience asked the questions. Is there any way we can do those classes online? Probably not. So many universities in Korea actually try to come up with a better idea to have in-person class. One way is to reduce the students and then have like more than one class, separate the class. That's the one usual approach we are taking in Korea.
Yes, Dr. Bach.
Yeah, let me share what we are doing in Korea at this moment. Thanks to the managing well from the Hong Kong government, Hong Kong people here. So now we almost have zero impacted cases inside the Hong Kong. So all of the impact cases for COVID-19 is imported the visitors. So in that case, what we are doing is we are implementing hybrid learning. Yeah. So those students in local, so we allow them to come to the class. And then the rest of the students who are staying in international countries, they can join online. So now how much ratio is there? Approximately 50% of students come to the class. So we have the class in person, and then 50% of the students, the majority, obviously, they are international students. They actually join via the online. So, but actually, we actually, this kind of the system is mainly applicable to the practical classes. Of course, it's very some challenges to explain detail how to do only from the online. So in the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, so we are mainly try to implement hybrid learning for this kind of practical classes.
You and so is there, I think we answer to this question. So is there anyone who have any questions or comments of others' presentation? No. Great. So thank you, everyone. I would like to express my sincere thanks and respect to all of you. And the initiative of this webinar came from Dean Sang-Taek Lim of Hospitality and Tourism Institute of Duitan University and supported by Professor Young-Yong Hwang, Chairman of Asia Pacific Tourism Association. So we wanted to organize this virtual conference to think together how we educate future generations and question what we need to teach and what we need to prepare for educators, students, and those who are interested in the hospitality and tourism sectors. So you may not have all answers, but I hope this DTU Webinar Series give you a good chance to think about our future of tourism education. We appreciate you being here and thanks again for joining us today. And I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.